You look terrible. I want you to eat. I want you to rest well, and a month from now, this Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want.
It's too late. They start shooting in a week.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and yikes, not a good look having Sony reaching out to both Vice and Polygon, apparently, for not giving the game a stellar 10 out of 10 review score. That is, of course, The Last of Us 2. Now, I know I'm building up a nice little contingent of people that are really, really angry that I keep pointing out some of the hilarity around this game. I will remind you, and my regular viewers obviously also understand, my position is and will always be, if you like the game, you win. Okay? If you enjoyed your $60 purchase or whatever you paid for the game, you enjoyed it, you played it through, you got your oodles of satisfaction, you win. I'm not saying that sarcastically. I'm not saying that to be a jerk. All right? I want you to know that. I truly believe that. Individual entertainment is what matters. If you like it, you like it. There's nothing wrong with that. That said, there's a lot of spice around the game. And I'm not going to just produce videos be like, wow, it was, you know what? There are good parts of the game. Look, it came out relatively bug-free. The graphics, you know, the visuals are above average. They're about the standard, I would say, of what I would think of a modern AAA game. And a lot of people bought it. These are good things to talk about. Okay, let's move on. With 100,000 Metacritic reviews, The Last of Us 2 may be the most polarizing game ever. Paul Tassi, which has in general been an apologist for the industry on this game, his reporting, though, is usually solid. His bias obviously leans towards industry. Well, we finally got there. With 100,000 user reviews in The Last of Us Part 2, I believe that sets a record for the site by a wide margin. Even though I can't check every single game released, nothing else I looked even comes close. GTA 5, the most popular game of all time, has something like 20 to 25,000 user reviews. And it's been on 5 different platforms since 2013. Think about that. GTA 5, what a juggernaut. All 100,000 The Last of Us Part 2 reviews are on the PS4, all written in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And you know what? I want to say this. Kudos to Metacritic for not deleting, from what I can tell, large swaths of these. Now, there have been times where it looked like reviews disappeared, but the site may have been experiencing glitches. I myself experienced timeout errors and a variety of other issues when just trying to check up on the scores. Yes, in the world of video gaming, 4.9 is a bad score. And yet it almost represents an almost perfect pull of players spamming the user reviews with both zeros and tens. There you go, Paul. There you go. That's been my point since Jump Street. The Last of Us Part 2 is not a 10 out of 10. The Last of Us Part 2 is not a 0 out of 10. It's not a 9 out of 10. It's not a 1 out of 10. All right? It's a 6 or a 7. And you know what? Many of you, my viewers, have reached out to tell me in private emails. You send me emails like, yeah, the game's probably a solid 6 or 7. You know, it doesn't have a lot of replayability. The combat mechanics get boring, and I didn't like the story. Those are 3 big things. 10, 9, 8, 7. Puts it at a 7, all right? Very reasonable score for the game, all right? And speaking of my viewers, you know, a large chunk of you are subscribing, but still almost 40% are not subscribed. There's a red subscribe button below the video, and I hope today will be the day I earn your subscription. I'm going to ease up on asking for it. I know many of you are getting sick of it. I'll ask maybe once a day instead of in every video. But I'm hoping, given the variety of topics and the consistency I put out videos, you'll consider subscribing today. If you don't like the game, it's a 0. If you do, it's a 10. The critic score remains a 94 out of 100 and has only dropped a tiny bit since launch. I think it was peaked at 96, right? If we are using pure Metacritic as judges here, I genuinely believe that The Last of Us Part 2 might be one of the most controversial games ever made. And when we say controversial, that can mean a number of things. That can be Manhunt. That can be Modern Warfare 2. That can be all sorts of things, which is fair. But I am thinking more controversial in terms of fans simply being angry about how the game went, or going to bat to defend it. And that makes me think of Mass Effect 3 and its ending. And yet, even that game has under 12,000 user reviews after all this time, averaging a 5.8 across the platforms. Again, nothing else even comes close to the fervor we have seen surrounding The Last of Us 2. I have written many articles about why the game is so polarizing. There were big story leaks ahead of time. Some players were ready to brigading the game before they even played it, based on things like them knowing which characters pass. There is a crowd, though, many would deny its existence, that are rating the game low due to Naughty Dog's agenda of prominently featuring LGBTQ characters and swapping out the male lead of the first game for 2 women. All right, Paul. See, you do so good. You do so good, Paul. All right, let me just point out the fact that your own bias blinds you to. This might shock you, but there are also a group of people giving the game a 10 out of 10 because of the LGBTQ representation. There's also a group of people giving the game a 10 out of 10 because of the ending of Joel, a male character, and players being forced to play as females. You get that? It goes both ways, Paul. See, you're getting there. You're getting there, Paul. All right. Now, or some players just don't like the game. They don't like the combat, the pacing, the writing, whatever. Yeah, that's the biggest group, right? Those that are spamming 10s, they love all that stuff and believe that absolutely a worthy sequel to the game, despite the fact that the game turns its characters and storyline on its head. I'm one of those people. My official review that's on the Metacritic part of Metacritic review gave it a 9.5. Way too high, Paul. And I do think we've seen user scores rise as more people have finished the game. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They have risen. A story the past day or so has been, in general, Sony's weirdness about what critics thought about the game. Waypoint's Rob Zachney reported that Sony PR contacted him about his critical but unscored review of the game, politely but kind of creepily. I have had no such interactions with Sony PR. PR won't talk to me at all, and I bought the copy myself as a result. Is the controversy over? Probably to some extent, given that there will be no DLC for the game, and if there ever was a third one, it won't be for years and years to come. I don't know what the user score review total will stop at, but this is already record setting. I'm guessing that it'll end, somewhere around a 6 out of 10, which is what the game is, in my opinion. Now, you could argue it's a 7. Okay. You could argue that it's a 5. Okay. But the game's not a 0, 1, 2, or 3, and it's definitely not a 10 or a 9. You could really make the case for an 8. If you really loved it, I might listen to it. But it's just not. It's just not a 100 out of 100. It's ridiculous that anybody who will call themselves a professional reviewer would actually say that. But here's some more interesting news. Sony Naughty Dog contacting Polygon, Vice, and other websites who gave The Last of Us 2 less than a 10 out of 10. Stellar review to say they were unfair. Lamau, fragile are they? This is such a important thing for credibility's sake. All right. First of all, thank you to the brave journalists who will now be blacklisted from ever getting review copies from Sony again. But this is important. This is the very nexus at where the intimidation, where the shillery comes in, where people believe that these reviews are bought and paid for. Because if Sony PR is picking up the phone, what is the implication? That you've upset them and that they will cut you off. While the vast majority of the reviews have lavished The Last of Us 2 Part 2 with all sorts of praise on a handful of outlets, Polygon included, have been slightly more critical of the blockbuster game. According to Zachney, Vice's review prompted a Sony representative to reach out on the behalf of Naughty Dog. Quote, They felt some of the conclusions I reached in my review were unfair and dismissed some meaningful change or improvement, Zachney told Polygon over Twitter messages. And you see Legacy Killer HD saying, this is so weird. Based on reporting coming from Polygon, Sony reps on behalf of Naughty Dog reached out to Vice about their negative review of The Last of Us Part 2. Apparently they didn't agree with some of the opinions that Point made in the review. Come on, Neil Druckmann. You guys are better than this. Just why? Why do you have these? This is why you have these stupid conspiracies pop up about you paying off reviewers, because things like this definitely fuel those claims. Zachney clarifies in the exchange that it wasn't confrontational, but that it was nonetheless unusual, as the site doesn't typically have big publishers asking in an official capacity why a review reads the way that it does. Such things can happen, of course, though often with smaller developers or from publishers who have spotted a factual error in a piece that they want corrected. Quote, I was happy to unpack a bit of my reasoning, however, and received a perfectly cordial message in response, Zachney said. Naughty Dog's PR team declined to comment on Polygon's inquiry about his exchange with Vice. I mean, that's creepy. And then the apologists will say they definitely forgot this part. No review was ever asked to be changed. Here's what you don't understand about how the world works, young child. Sweet summer child. Is that they don't have to. If EA calls and says, hey, I noticed you didn't like that game. What do you know, we give you this early access. I just thought it was weird that. What do you think the problem is with access journalism, you sweet summer child? This is exactly what we've been talking about for years. Publishers will, why do you think there's so many 100s out of 100? The game is clearly not a 100. Anybody who says it is just a, I don't know, a moron. I've got a bridge to sell you. I've got some swampland to sell you. I've got a great investment. See, all you have to do is give me a bunch of money up front, and then what you do is you sign up a bunch of your friends, and then see, here's the best part. They'll sign up their friends, then I'll get a little bit of that money, you'll get a little bit of that money, then their friends will sign up their friends, and then we'll all be rich. It's so easy. Just like how easy it was to give this game a perfect 100 out of 100 score. Definitely creepy that developers are reaching out. Definitely not surprising. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.